California's Yuba River starts high on the western slope of the Sierra. A composite of the Slate, Indian, Canyon, and Snake. Fed by tiny nameless creeks, clattering toward it from either side. By glistening springs trickling over its mossy banks.
In Yuba County, water has given and taken everything. Water built the community.
We started with the water, so we're not going to be here without our water.
And threatened to destroy it.
The amount of water that can come down this river at a moment's notice is mind-boggling.
They had floods regularly, 55.
Releasing a terrific quantity of water which spread at freight train speed.
86.
This is scary.
97.
In Yuba County, total devastation.
You're feeling it for the people that possibly could be gone.
This is the story of a small community that stood their ground against incredible odds.
Those kind of stories that we just can't imagine nowadays.
A story of determination, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. A story told by those who know it best.
We do beat the odds over and over again. It's like just when they count you out, we come back. Yuba is the comeback kid.
If we don't teach our children the history of what there was, they won't appreciate where they're growing up, what people did, how hard it was for them to do it, and the life they can have here. Well, John Sutter was the first European to own land here. In 1838, he became a Mexican citizen, and within 2 years, he had to have 12 settling families, or that land, which is now 7 counties in California, reverted back to the Mexican government. My family was one of those families.
Named for a survivor of the Donner Party, the city of Marysville came to be in an opportune place at an opportune time.
The city of Marysville was founded in 1850 during the gold rush. The people who created the city realized immediately the value of locating at the confluence of the Yuba and Feather Rivers because of the gold activity.
Now in 1848, when gold was discovered in California, men came here from all over the world to seek it out.
Marysville, because of the gold rush, experienced 50 years worth of growth in 5 years. And Mark Twain once called it the most well-built city in all of California.
We planted about 5,000 acres in about 4 weeks. My great-grandfather came in 1851. And this property at that time was owned by a freed slave. In 1852, Marysville was as far as the steamships could come up from San Francisco.
The bridges coming into town, if you can look down, the old piers are still there, the original plaza where the steamships came. And they'd either go up the Yuba or up the Feather, or they'd disembark and the miners would leave from there.
The amount of gold that came out of Yuba County and Nevada County and Placer County in the mid-19th century, if you read about it, that was one of the reasons that the Union was successful in the Civil War, is that the gold that California was producing at that time was a real plus financially to the Union, and that's one of the reasons that California became a state so early in the game.
More gold was taken out of the Yuba River watershed than any river watershed in the entire United States.
But it wasn't long before they picked up all of the easy gold. then they began to be faced with the fantastic engineering problems of getting gold out of the secret places where it had lain for millions of years. If water had placed the gold in those riverbeds to begin with, why not use water to blast it loose again?
Hydraulic mining powered the gold rush economy, but was incredibly damaging to the river. Entire hillsides were washed away, sending millions of tons of silt and debris down the Yuba, threatening farmers' livelihoods, raising flood risk, even starting a local civil war.
The issue here really became farmers versus miners.
My great-grandpappy, okay, and he came out here, brought his wife, and they planted an orchard, okay, and he was going to make a great success and have a dozen kids. And then you see this river of sand, of sludge coming. Imagine a young orchard getting buried with the silt from hydraulic mining, okay? They literally raised the ceiling floor of where he lived 20 to 30 feet.
River traffic became impossible. San Francisco Bay turned brown the year round. And on the farms outside of the river towns, hundreds of acres of fruit orchards were strangled.
When the hydraulic mining was going on, people in Marysville were quite happy with it. In fact, they were making what they called the monitors, the giant nozzles and the canvas hoses that they used in the operation. And the mayor of Marysville would point to the muddy Yuba River, saying, that activity, that's our economy. And it wasn't until 1875, the flood of 1875, that they joined with the farmers in Sutter County against the hydraulic miners.
In 1884, a court ruling by Judge Lorenzo Sawyer banned hydraulic mining in California, the first environmental ruling in U.S. history. The people of Marysville, who once celebrated hydraulic mining, partied in the streets.
The war was over. The mines must close. And the people of the valley went to bed in peace.
After the gold rush, our gold here is our agriculture. So the flumes that were used for the gold, they became our irrigation canals to grow the agriculture in this area.
Even as Marysville became a hub of farming and commerce, locals lived under the long shadow of Mother Nature, under the constant threat of flooding.
So the largest flood here has been the super flood of 1862 that actually flooded Sacramento. The governor had to row his boat to his inauguration, and they moved the capital of Sacramento for a while because of the flooding. So the community found out early, again, that they had to make a decision about whether they were going to stay here and what they were going to do in order to stay here, or whether they're going to have to abandon the place. And we're here. So we know what the decisions were.
After the mining debris filled in the rivers, it was a constant fight to be able to keep the water out of Marysville.
The levees were largely mined out of the channel itself or from whatever was available at the time. In this region, there are silts and sands that are very permeable. And so what happens when we have water against them for an extended period of time, they become saturated and they start to melt away, just like if you're heating up a cube of butter.
Those levees were tested time and time again. Dams were built upstream to hold back mining debris. It wasn't enough to hold back the full force of Mother Nature on Christmas 1955.
It's just the biggest storm we'd had since 1909 in December of '55.
Shortly after midnight on the morning of the 24th, December 1955, the Feather River broke its levee at Gumtree, 2½ miles south of Yuba City.
In a matter of minutes, a wall of water 5 feet high rolled across the frightened city, crushing homes and business buildings like matchwood, or moving them completely off their foundations. It was one of the worst flood disasters in the history of the United States.
I think we had possibly a half hour's notice.
Where was your husband at this time?
Well, he had been...
The Red Cross was there, the Salvation Army, the Boy Scouts, the National Guard, the Public Health Service, and many others.
Marysville's levees held, barely. The break happened on the Feather River in Yuba City near midnight. 38 people died.
You know, I stand on the front porch of my house, and I was 10 years old, and I heard a roar. I can still hear that roar. I can just think about that roar and houses floating by our house. I can still see that. I can still hear it. Never wanted to happen again.
As a senior in high school, we didn't understand the gravity of it, but a week later we were over in Yuba City mucking the houses out. You know, wearing hip boots and, you know, muck 6 inches deep and a big shovel and pushing it outdoors. Houses were knocked off their foundation. I mean, it was just devastating.
Certainly a Christmas that will never be forgotten by the unfortunate residents of Yuba City and Lower Sutter County.
Not too far up from where we're sitting right now was the 1950 flood, and that broke through the rock piles, through the community of Hamilton and on out to the south districts where these guys are from, and did, you know, millions of dollars worth of damage. So our supervisors at that time, when the 55 flood came along, could say, hey, we need some type of flood control.
It wasn't just flood protection on people's minds. South of the Yuba River, farmers were pumping so much groundwater that wells were going dry. The hope was creating the Yuba County Water Agency would solve both problems.
So the agency was formed in 1959, and I always tell people, the agency and I were formed in the same year. It's a great year.
In a community rich in history but short on money, Yuba Water took on California's largest public works project ever led by a public agency.
They were remembering the flood, and they felt it was their duty and mission to do something about it.
And if you look at what was happening on the Feather River, the state was building Orville Dam. On the American River, the feds were building Folsom Dam. And nothing was happening on the Yuba River.
The community organized around the idea of, we're going to build a dam. If they're not going to build it, we'll build it.
It is the most incredible local government story ever to me. We can't wait for the feds anymore. We can't wait for the state. We've got to do it ourselves.
Building New Bullard's Bar, the 5th tallest dam in the country, would have been a huge lift for anyone, let alone one of the poorest counties in the state. The idea sparked fierce debate at the Capitol.
And the reality was the state really didn't want a small county to build it. You know, they were building all these projects, and this was a big project, and there was no way a small county could do it, but, you know, we'll give you the authority, we'll give you the special district.
Oh, I would say it was definitely a miracle that got done. From what I understand, it was debated on the assembly floor longer than any public works project up to that point in California.
And it probably wouldn't have happened other than, you know, the Brown governor, because he was big into water supply, and the whole state water project was being formed at the time, and so there was, you know, a governor that was pro-water projects.
Well, I think it speaks to the boldness of the time. My father, because he was Attorney General, had water cases and got very interested and committed. So he pushed the water plan, and finally they got it done. Obviously he signed the water development program for Yuba County.
Well, we're going to harvest this one. These are early girl tomatoes, and they're really the ones that I found work best in this climate. So, the agency was created, but then how do you accomplish this water supply and flood protection? And that was done through the Yuba River Development Project, and there's a lot of stories about that.
Construction continued around the clock for 3 years. They blasted and bored through solid rock to build New Bullard's Bar Dam and Reservoir. They carved a tunnel through the hillside, building a penstock to carry water to New Colgate Powerhouse to generate electricity, with 2 of the largest Pelton wheel turbines ever built, 18 feet across, weighing 70,000 pounds. Equally impressive were the people of Yuba County, willing to put everything on the line for a project that cost far more than the whole county was worth.
They put out the vote to issue bonds. At the time, it was $185 million worth of bonds. Okay. At that time, it was 2.5 times the total appraised value of all of the property in the county. Okay. And 92% of the voters in Yuba County said, yes, we need to issue those bonds. I think about that and say, 2.5 times the total value of all the property today is $12.5 billion. Okay, that's the level of commitment they were making.
The challenges were immense. Not a single contractor bid on the project. So it was redesigned to cut costs. After agonizing financial wrangling and negotiating, a firm called Perini Yuba signed on. But who would pay? Not Yuba Water.
They didn't have any money. They couldn't buy anything. And so as a result, they had to negotiate and put together agreements where the people that had the money were willing to part with it to develop this project.
You start out by moving dirt, tons of dirt.
A financing partner eventually emerged, Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E.
I did not know the history. It was like it was buried in the archives. Nobody seemed to care. Even Pacific Gas and Electric Company had long since forgotten where they started. First of all, Colgate Powerhouse today is located on the original site of the original Colgate Powerhouse, which was 1899. And it has an interesting history because 3 men had a vision of electrifying the north state of California. DeSabla, the engineer, Martin, the salesman, and Romulus Riggs Colgate, the financier, they put this project together. They built the first powerhouse and delivered power 6 months to the day to Sacramento. But their real desire was to get to the Bay Area. They developed a 40,000 volt transmission line, 141 miles long, and carried the power to Oakland. They incorporated into Pacific Gas and Electric Company on January 2nd, 1906. On April 18th, 1906, was the catastrophic San Francisco earthquake. They survived it, they didn't go bankrupt, and from that point on, they became a successful company. The largest private electric utility in the world. And it all started here.
In 1966, work began in a steep canyon 5 miles northeast of the town of Dobbins.
Generations later, in the late 60s, PG&E agreed to finance the Yuba River Development Project. But in return, they would receive all of the hydropower revenue from New Colgate for the next 50 years.
Pacific Gas and Electric Company was not in the business for flood protection. They were in the business to make power.
A deal was struck, and at long last, construction began nearly 7 years after the agency was formed.
Don Wilson, my predecessor, would tell stories about how the wheels would fall off the project, and then everybody'd gather together and go put the wheels on again. And just a great story of perseverance.
You moved mountains of dirt to chew your way down.
It really was an impossible project. I mean, it was, if you were up at that dam and looked at it, back then and looked in the canyon, you just couldn't imagine it. The old guys that were the surveyors would talk about, and I think, man, they had to be in good shape because they surveyed it with links and chains. So you're walking these incredibly steep canyons. We don't have GPS or a laser. They are walking them with links of chain, measuring everywhere where the water line would be. And all of us who've been around here a long time, my father worked on it, the duct work and he was a sheet metal worker. My grandfather was an electrician, he worked on the dam. Everybody who was in construction, if you had family, they worked up on Buller's Bar. It was the big project.
This project has come to reality through the vision and the enterprise and the cooperation of many people who will reap its benefits, not only for themselves, but for the people of California. It's this cooperation that's brought Yuba County an invaluable source of hydroelectric power, a storage basin for the floodwaters that have plagued the lower areas for so many years, and a recreational site that can be used and enjoyed by all Californians.
We started out as a department of Yuba County. It was kind of like a closet, like here's a little extra space.
So when I first was elected, I was elected as a county supervisor. And they were giving me a tour of the courthouse where we were housed at the time. And they said, oh, by the way, you also sit on the Yuba County Water Agency, which I had heard of but didn't know much about. They took me down this corridor of a hallway into a room that was literally no more than 10 by 10. And it was Don Wilson and Nancy Jones. And that was the office. And that was my first impression of the Yuba County Water Agency.
Turn. That's better. I worked for Yuba County Water Agency for 29 years. Yes. Anything in the office was paid for through the general fund. And if we needed supplies and stuff like a pen for one person, we went down and bought one pen. We never ever bought a box of pens because we didn't have that kind of funding. Back in the 80s, we probably had somewhere between 12 and 15 people at the plant. There was 2 clerical staff that worked for me, and then I worked and Don Wilson worked. And that was it, and then we had a part-time hydrologist.
Nobody could have predicted or fully prepared for the levee failure in 1986 that changed this small water agency and the course of Yuba County forever.
Muddy water from the Yuba River spread over the towns of Linda and Olivehurst. People scrambled to leave with whatever they could carry. By 10 o'clock, water was flooding the streets on the outskirts of Olivehurst as authorities moved ahead of it, rushing to complete their evacuations.
Evacuate the Olivehurst area. Southbound, Highway 65.
Sheriff's Department. In areas nearest the river, people were reportedly rescued from rooftops. Many lined Highway 70, heading south, bumper to bumper, on one of the few roads left open. No one really knew exactly how high the floodwater would reach.
By daybreak, the full extent of the destruction came into focus. Damage stretched into the hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's kind of scary not knowing if everything you have is, floated away, and we had to leave our dog there, if he's alive. It's scary.
The poor community of Linda really suffered and has never really
recovered from the 86 levee failure.
After the 86 flood event, the agency really started looking at how can they as an agency help the entire county. What are the studies that we need to do? And we started lobbying for flood studies and what kind of work do we need to do on the levees.
Well, I started working with Yuba Water in about 1986, 1987. You know, the sole revenues then were a small amount of county tax revenue, and then their water sales, you know, they covered the cost of the water and not much more. The agency looked at, you know, what its assets were and how they could maybe maximize those, and so we talked about water transfers.
You know, now water transfers are deemed, you know, they're just part of the world. I mean, you know, everybody does it. But back then, there were very few water transfers from the North State, especially ones that were fairly large. As you know, you can now read sometimes, but you're selling your soul to the devil. You're moving, you know, water to the south.
There was a lot of distrust between Northern California generally and Southern California. And it was, they want our water, and once they get our water, it's never coming back.
And yet, one of the things I've told people forever, the options up here, guys, there's two options. We're either going to move water, or they're going to move to Yuba County. Would you rather have LA here, or would you rather have LA there? So let's figure this out.
Never an agency to shy away from a challenge, Yuba Water spearheaded legislation, fast-tracking water transfers, and guaranteeing that the community making the transfer would never be left high and dry. It passed without a single no vote.
And that, since then, has been really the mechanism by which millions and millions of acre-feet have been transferred throughout California.
Whenever we get a check-in, especially if it was over $1 million, everybody in the office had to hold it for a second. Because, hey, $1 million? Wow.
Those water transfers funded levee studies, so Yuba Water was first in line for state and federal dollars for flood protection. But in 1997, Mother Nature delivered another devastating blow.
Above the spillway at Lake Oroville, hundreds of millions of gallons of water a second crash into the Feather River. But can the already saturated levee system handle all this water?
You know, we were very concerned that we were going to make it through this because we knew how much water was coming down through the system. And, you know, and I've been through enough floods now that you know, okay, you get to a certain point, the levee's going to break somewhere, but you don't know where. Mm-hmm. And it was the next day. I live in Brownsville, so it's about 45 to 50 minutes away. And when I drove in my driveway, the radio said that it broke. It was traumatic for us because we knew people could possibly die. And people did.
My heart goes out to everybody that has lost everything.
I wanted to get in the car and just leave and never come back.
The water level here was above the windows, pretty close to 9 feet deep. I should have known better because, I mean, I went through the 1955 flood. You know, live and learn.
For those that thought they could come back after 11 years, it was done. Put a fork in it because people were not motivated to live in Yuba County, let alone invest in businesses as well.
How you both doing? Good. Good. How about some coffee to start with?
Coffee.
Mm-hmm. We own the local diner here in Olivehurst. It's called Duke's Diner after my dad, and we've been in business for almost 60 years. We moved from Sacramento.
Like we did in 2017. Remember when they were
Working in the diner, I have this interaction going 7 days a week with folks.
Hey, great idea.
And it's kind of like the hub, you know, like this little city hall.
I'm still in politics. I just like
talking to a lot of the folks that I went to school with, that I was neighbors with, that said that our parents can't go through another one of these and something has to be done. And it really happened at Duke's Diner, you know, sitting around this table. I guess I drew the short straw on this one, and it was, you know, decided that I would run for the Board of Supervisors. As a county supervisor, you also become a member of the Yuba Water Agency. My first thing was, we have to have flood protection. You know, okay, I don't care if we have a new park, money for a park. What good is it if it's underwater?
$18.95?
The Grassroots effort that began at Duke's Diner helped spark a groundswell of change. In the years following the '97 flood, Yuba Water led efforts with local, state, and federal partners to dramatically strengthen the levees, work that continues in earnest to this day.
You know, it was personal. You know, it was personal, not to be flooded once, but twice in 11 years. It was like, you know, you can't get away with that. And I wasn't just saying that to the state or the federal government. I was saying that to anybody who would listen, is that this poor community deserves better. And I'm going to be a loud voice for them in order to make sure that they have a level of safety that most people take for granted.
Setback levees were built on the Feather and Bear Rivers. Improvements were made to strengthen the Marysville Ring Levee around the city of Marysville. After more than $500 million in investment and several decades, Yuba County is now one of the best protected communities at risk of flooding in California.
So at this point, I mean, you're sitting behind levees that probably have more money per capita than any levee system in the United States.
And I think it's loyalty. Loyalty to the community, loyalty to the families that were here before us. I think that's what it was about.
Well, so today was our first day of peach harvest. And they'll get canned and they will end up in somebody's shopping cart, hopefully. So, you know, it was from sun up to sundown. You know, back then it was kind of hard. My dad tells us, you know, the jobs weren't readily available. So they would have to go knock on door to door, try to find a job. They go out there with the headlights on to try to start early, work until they couldn't see anymore. You know, so we would go out in the summertime, so all my friends would be out learning how to swim. I still don't know how to swim. They learned how to swim, we were out picking peaches. We were out picking prunes. It was just trying to survive, trying to make that extra money, and just trying to raise the family. And Dad's goal was trying to put us to college, and so every little bit helped.
From one generation to the next, the roots of Yuba County farming run deep.
For this region, it is very important. We don't have big companies here. We don't have high-tech companies here. You know, so ag is everybody's bread and butter around in this region right here. You know, water is number one. I mean, without water, we have nothing.
That's rang true for more than a century at Daguerre Dam, built in the early 1900s to hold back debris from hydraulic mining. Irrigation districts north of the Yuba River saw opportunity here, building canals to move water to crops. The South County waited much longer.
When they built New Village Bar, they included a diversion that was going to put water in the south portion of Yuba County, south of Yuba River. The costs of actually building the dam was higher than what they had projected, and they literally had no money left over.
And what, it was 15 years later or so, and we started talking seriously, or you guys started talking seriously about, hey, remember the second half of that project, the surface water delivery? Look at this graph. We need to do this.
Some of us got together and decided that it was time for us to see if we couldn't do that ourselves. We built the canal that exists to this day.
The majority of the county now is in rice because that's basically the best use for that land. The rice prices in the 1980s were very poor, and the growers had to put up money to build this system, and it was really difficult. We tend to forget now, maybe, or some of the guys never even knew, but in those days, it was tough.
It was a real struggle for those that were involved in that, but I think the important thing is it was financed by the people who were using it.
It came at a steep cost, but the Wheatland Canal, as it's known, finally brought Yuba River water to South County farmers, reversing decades of declining groundwater levels.
The agency has a graph of the South County that shows before we started pumping out the ground and then after surface water came in. It's pretty dramatic. I'm sure you've seen it, Will.
Yep, many times.
Yeah, it's a really...
It really tells the story.
Exactly.
Right? And then the unsurprising but great result is just the restoration of that groundwater. The graph turns itself upside down basically and starts back up. And I think by the early 90s, it's kind of back to where it was in 1950.
It's been a godsend. We were running out of water down there. That area had been developed on wells, and the aquifer was going down constantly.
Today, Yuba Water supplies water to 8 irrigation districts, the agency's member units, supporting 60,000 acres of farmland from fruit trees to the king crop around here, rice.
Sushi rice, Japanese and Korean restaurants, you're eating medium grain rice. It's most probably anywhere in the United States is from California. It's a huge part of the economy here. And it's also the conservation crop. If it were not for the rice industry in the Pacific Flyway, the Pacific Flyway would collapse. 60% of the nourishment for ducks and geese come off these rice fields in the winter. Well, without the water resource, none of what you see in this camera or what you see in Yuba County would exist.
We are the partners of Yuba Water Agency. Us irrigation districts, 8 districts are in a partnership, and that's how we feel. Because of the fact we do use water out of the project, and that water grows crops to feed people. The agency needs us, and we actually, need the agency.
Even as Yuba Water made huge strides on the flood front, the agency faced one of its greatest challenges ever. One that took 2 decades to solve.
Yeah, the Yuba Accord was extraordinary. That's something you could have done a documentary on. All the ups and downs. It was full of drama, believe me. But it started out in 1988. A complaint was filed by a conservation group.
A complaint filed in the late 80s to the State Water Resources Control Board argued there wasn't enough water coming down the Yuba River for fish. It presented a very real threat to everything the agency had worked so hard to protect.
It was basically a water taking. When the state came in, they were basically going to take our water rights, not temporarily, forever. There were models that we showed that on certain years, all the water would run out to the bay and there would be no water left for anybody.
we heard about this complaint. We heard that the board was going to have a meeting, and the Department of Fish and Game provided a flow management plan. They would not give us the flow management plan. Don Wilson actually had to go to the Fish and Game office. He had to leave like his driver's license or credit card to get a copy of it and take that copy to a copy place, get a copy of it, and they went and reviewed it and they go, oh my goodness. All this hard work we did in building this project to provide reliable water supply is going to be gone if this draft water management plan goes forward.
But fortunately, we weren't ready to quit that easy.
Rather than fight it out in court, Yuba Water decided to seek a settlement. It took countless meetings to find common ground. First, with environmental agencies over how much water fish needed.
They had an Excel spreadsheet that filled up a wall with these little tiny cells of all these stressors by life stage, by species.
Over the course of that 20 years, we proposed that settlement to 6 different directors of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. 6 different directors.
We had already met and ironed out the deal with the NGOs and the governmental agencies and the water contractors. Now we get to go home and work with our irrigation district and thought, well, this should be the easy part, right? No, and I'll never forget out of one of the meetings, it was so discouraging after we met with them because they really didn't understand the program. And I'll never forget Paul Barkowitz said, they don't understand it and we can't explain it.
They don't get it and we can't explain it to them. You know, there were challenges in all aspects of the agreement. And then we had engaged with them with a hydrologist like Steve Grinnell to figure out, okay, how do we make this work from a project operations standpoint?
As an engineer, I kind of have a bit of a personal motto: there's always a solution. So we just lay out the information for them. And farmers are great. You try to take something from them, and they'll stand at their fence line with a shotgun at you. But if you show them a way to get something done to move forward, they're fantastic partners.
What Yuba did is they took basically lemons and made some lemonade out of it. And that's the best way to put it. Just trust me, get in the car in the dark, and we're going to go for a ride, right? And we're going to end up at X. And that's kind of what a little bit of it was.
In the end, 3 agreements were ironed out as part of the Lower Yuba River Accord. More water would flow for fish, Yuba Water would be allowed to transfer some of that water south, and Yuba County farmers agreed to pump groundwater in dry years and use surface water in the wet years to replenish the groundwater, safeguarding local water supplies.
It is the solution, the model for solving water problems.
The Accord was the single most important event since building the dam to happen to the Yuba Water Agency.
Rivers freeze and summer ends. See, for me, she has a coat so warm. There you go.
This agency has the potential to change Yuba County forever. Once the bonds were paid off, there was going to be a revenue stream that could make an impact in this poor county. So it got you to dreaming about what the future would be.
As the sun rose over New Bullard's Bar one April morning in 2016, a future 50 years in the making arrived. Yuba Water was about to take the reins from PG&E.
The agreement with PG&E was wonderful. It's what allowed us to build the dam and build the powerhouses. It was necessary, right?
Yuba had the opportunity to just sign another agreement with PG&E.
They, what I say, jumped off the cliff. We're going to do it ourselves.
It proved to be incredibly difficult with a punch list that just went on and on and on.
As Yuba Water formed its own power operation from the ground up, the agency negotiated with PG&E, with someone who would become a very familiar face on the other side of the table.
I have to blame it on my mom's sister, my aunt. She would take me to the races in Grass Valley. I can remember going there when I was like 4 years old, and I always said, I'm going to be a race car driver someday. Well, I'm not a race car driver.
Instead, Willie Whittlesey ended up in the fast-paced world of water, and his career path had its share of twists and turns.
I was at the time managing the contracts between PG&E and all of the irrigation districts and water agencies that PG&E dealt with. And Kurt and Yuba County Water Agency were one of those contracts. So I was managing that. I was on the other side of the table from Kurt Aiken, managing the end of what I didn't even realize at the time was such a historic agreement for Yuba County, right? Not realizing that someday I would be on the other side of the table, actually managing those agreements that I was negotiating. Now here I am as the general manager, and it's like, hey, we've got this wonderful resource that was kind of locked up for 50 years.
I was there when the transition happened, right at the time. We were at the Colgate Power Plant, and the board of directors were there and stuff like that. And it was just, it was like 2000, when the year 2000 came in, it's just another tick on the clock, right? It went fine. There was no fear.
From that day forward, power from New Colgate belonged to Yuba Water. The revenue to the people of Yuba County.
I don't know if you can compare it to any other place in California. Where else has a small agency, community, county done something of that magnitude?
That willingness and courage to take a little bit of a chance. The board took a chance with us when we take these, hey, we're adding this staff, we want to spend this many $1 million to make this change. It took a lot of confidence and courage on their parts. There's been courage all the way through the organization.
What kind of pride do you feel?
Oh, a lot. It's been a fight. We made it.
Today, this historic community is poised to write its next chapter. In the gold fields, more dirt was moved here than to build the Panama Canal. Piece by piece, Yuba Water is working to reverse the devastating impacts of hydraulic mining, restoring habitat to support declining fish populations. New Bullard's Bar is still the crown jewel of the agency and also a hidden gem as a recreation destination. While much of California grapples with declining groundwater, here the underground aquifer is in great shape. An area once beset by flooding is now one of the best protected in the state and continuing to work toward a first-of-its-kind milestone, 500-year flood protection, meaning there's a 1 in 500 chance in any given year that a flood could overpower the system. And in the high country, Yuba Water is leading unprecedented efforts to return forests to healthy natural conditions, protecting the watershed and reducing the risk of a devastating wildfire.
I think that we have an area of the county that's as well protected as can be from both flood and fire. And the water agency is working at both ends of the spectrum, from the top of the Sierras to the bottom, of our flood zones.
All the while, Yuba Water is pouring hydropower revenue back into the community, investing in our leaders of tomorrow, investing to breathe new life into an economy that has struggled for far too long. It has taken immeasurable sacrifice and determination over many, many years. But in Yuba County, the future is bright.
My passion is really how can you leave the county in a better place that you've been involved in. And my two brothers play golf and I go to water meetings. It's been very interesting and rewarding, and I'm proud that I was part of it.
There's a real sense of community. And it is that commitment to, no, this is our county. We're going to make it as good as we can.
What I think the most important thing for me is 50 years from now, my great-grandchildren will still want to live here. so that the children of Yuba County say, this is a great place to live and we're going to stay. And that to me is success.
Probably not smart enough to go anywhere else. And here I sit and I'm dug in and I think, maybe I'm the dumb guy. All my ancestors, when things got a little crappy, they moved on. And I don't know, maybe it's the Pacific Ocean has stopped us, I don't know, but we're dug in and we're not moving.
You know, it was all about how do we get this done? How do we work together and willing to take risks?
What more can we do? How do we think big? How do we dream big like the original founders of the agency?
There's just so much potential here in Marysville and in Yuba County. I just want to see us live up to that potential.